First of all, I'd like to welcome all of those that are attending live, and thank you for your time. And specifically thank Peter and Natalie from McCabe Kerwood, who are giving up their time to talk about how to realise value through productised legal apps. And on that note, I might just quickly introduce myself and then hand over to Peter and Natalie to introduce themselves. I'm Paul Vank. I'm one of the co-founders of Checkbox, and I provide advice and guidance to a lot of both in-house counsel and law firms on how to deploy and take the apps once they've built them to market or to deploy them internally to stakeholders. So that's my interest in this particular subject. Peter, Natalie?
Ladies first.
Oh, thank you. Hi, I'm Nat. Thanks everybody for tuning in and coming to listen to us. I am the head of knowledge management at McCabe Kerwood. For those of you who don't know what that is, I am primarily responsible for the learning needs of our firm. So I set and execute the L&D program, and I support the firm in continuous improvement in the way that we run our matters. So it works well for our firm, but also our clients. So that continuous improvement piece, which leads me to the other half of what I do, which is innovation. So I set the innovation strategy and I help execute that in the firm.
Hi everybody, it's a pleasure to be here and thanks for joining us. I'm Peter Hunt. I've been a principal of Kerwood's since 2005 and then a principal of McCabe Kerwood since 2018 when we merged. McCabe Kerwood is if you don't know, it's a national firm. We have a commercial division and a insurance division, which are roughly the same size. I'm in the insurance division, so we help insurers defend claims for personal injury and property damage. My specialty is in motor accident claims, and that's my background.
Excellent. Just a quick bit of housekeeping. If you're on your screen, you can see that there's a Q&A button. Feel free to ask questions. We'll endeavour to answer them if we've got time at the end, and we'll answer them online or through posting the answers along with the recording of this webinar. There's also a poll which I'll launch towards the end, which just asks a couple of questions which you may be interested in participating on. And again, we'll post-webinar be circulating the results of that. We're trying to aggregate, I guess, as much data around automation of legal services, both from a law firm's perspective as well as from an in-house counsel and internal stakeholders' perspective. In terms of cutting straight to the chase, I guess increasingly, both law firm lawyers, head of knowledge, legal ops professionals in-house counsel are using technology to automate or provide advice, whether it's to internal stakeholders, to deliver more automated, efficient services internally, or to provide value add services to their clients. And I guess a good place to start is, why do this? What is motivating law firms and in-house counsel to do this? So, Peter, I might start with you. Why create legal apps in the first place?
Well, firstly, because it's fun. When you spend all your day drafting legal advices, doing something left field and creating an app is really a novel way to use your time, and I found it a really fun experience. But give me a more serious answer. In what we do, it's a very commoditized industry. We have clients who tell us when they want advice, what format to put the advice in, how much to charge for the advice. We get to choose the content of the advice, but they dictate everything else. And there's for each insurer we act for, there might be 3 or 4 other firms on the panel who do similar work to us. And look, there's good people in every firm. So we're looking for ways to stand out and differentiate ourselves from the market. So just giving a bit of history on that, we've been innovative in the value add space for quite some time. One example is our case notes back in the Kerwood's days, which started in around 2005. More recently, we developed a podcast series where we publish a podcast every week. It's called the Proper Lookout Podcast, dealing with legal issues in the motor accident space mostly, but also workers' comp. And so I think the next logical step beyond that kind of innovation was to move into technology. And with our partnership with Checkbox, which has been fantastic, I think moving into app development was the next logical step to have that differentiation between our firm and firms we compete with. So that's from our internal perspective. But from a client perspective, it's all about adding value. We believe that by developing apps to help our clients deal with old problems in a new way, we help in providing value to them. How about you, Nat? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with what you said. I think it provides us with an opportunity to solve problems, particularly legal problems, quickly and with certainty. And we're able to do it cost effectively, and I think quite importantly in plain business language. There have been so many times, and back in the day I was an M&A lawyer, a transactional lawyer, and I can't tell you how many times I've been told by clients, you've given me 5 pages of advice, or when I just don't understand half of it, it's too complex, I need it to be broken down. And this is a really good way for us to be able to do that. So a good example is if you've got an answer to a problem that you've found in a piece of legislation, which is hard to interpret. It's just a really way. So when we talk about, old problems, new solutions, that's a good example of how we're doing it. So we're just breaking it down and we're making it very digestible for clients, which has been very well received. I think 2 other quick points that I wanted to make from an internal perspective is that it's, for us, it solves a number of different challenges that we've had. It allows us to use one piece of technology for many different use cases. Without it, you'll find that you might have a number of different problems, but you'll need 3 or 4 systems, which can be very complicated. And we know there is more often than not a big change management piece that goes with deploying technology, using technology. So in my experience, I find less is more, and you just need to be very strategic about what technology is in your armory, because you can do smart things with it and hopefully have just a few things that do many, many things. But the other very quick point I was going to make is I am finding, I think the curriculum of legal degrees, they are changing. I was listening to a dean of one of our big universities in Australia only 2 weeks ago, talking about reimagining the way that they deliver their classes, and they're looking at all sorts of things like coding, for example. And they're coming into firms, and I think they're expecting to be able to do that, and they've got great ideas. We live in a digital world, and they tend to be much more savvy, certainly, than I was as a baby lawyer, and they're wanting to digitize those solutions. And I think for us to be able to really just recruit talent, I think we need to be able to cater for that.
It's amazing to think, isn't it, that when I started law school, I was doing my essays, I'd write them out in a handwritten form and then type them up later. I didn't even have a PC. And now they're teaching coding at law school. Amazing.
Yeah, we have server pro bono a number of universities in Australia and Singapore now, and universities are offering legal technology as part of their curriculum, which is great to see. And on that note, I just mentioned Singapore, but I did have a potential client of ours was a law firm that had some particular challenges in, I guess, persuading partners in their law firm why why do it at all. And you've launched some great apps at McCabe Kerwood, and we'll come to those in a second because I think they're really interesting, the types of use cases. But before we get there, what are some of the barriers that you see in a law firm? And I think this probably applies to in-house counsel as well, to any lawyers in deploying technology where you used to, especially giving advice, where that used to be done in a very face-to-face or written manual way.
Well, that's still the case. Most of our advice is still provided through a written document where you might spend hours drafting an advice, then have a conference with a client. And that's still going to happen, Paul. I don't think that's going to go away with technology. But the barrier is because that's the way things have always been done. It's difficult, I think, for some organisations to change that kind of thinking and to break away from that traditional way of delivering legal services and trying something new, which obviously providing advice through an automated process is completely new for most law firms or in-house counsel. So it's that inertia, which I think is the difficulty. And it's also a lot of work. That's the other barrier which sprung to mind when you asked the question. It was a lot more work than I expected. I think when we first started talking about one of our apps called MC Max, which we'll talk about in a moment, I very ambitiously said to Nat, I can get this done in one weekend. That was ambitious. It took a lot longer than that. So I really underestimated the amount of work involved in developing an automated process.
Yeah. Natalie, I know we had some conversations when you were considering launching the MC Max app, which is, we'll describe in a second, or you'll describe in a second, but that was an app that you were deploying to one of your customers. What sort of questions did you need to address internally to sort of get that across the line?
Oh, I think one of the bigger concerns that sort of comes to mind is it going to cannibalize existing work? So if you do it like, in a very different way, you've automated and digitized processes such that lawyers are only, or a much smaller piece of that particular piece of work, are we taking away, away work that we would traditionally do it, and perhaps, the view being it being more profitable, and how do you solve, or how do you sort of demonstrate that is not going to happen? And that was certainly something that both Peter and I, when we set out on our journey, was a question that we had to address. Because when you're talking about new solutions to old problems, the first thing people think is, well, that's all very well and good, but it might be quicker and faster, but then it's going to cannibalize that work. So that was a challenge that we had to deal with. And I think there's probably two other quick points. One is I think people tend to be out of their comfort zone, particularly around, I think when you go into law, into a law firm, there is a lot of perfectionism, and you've got to get it right. I mean, as a lawyer, you have to get the advice right. So when you bring in innovation or innovative ways of doing things, you've got to have a bit of a shift in mindset, which is, yes, of course, the legal content needs to be right, but it doesn't need to be perfect. In fact, it shouldn't be perfect by the time it reaches the client, because in my experience, I find that what we think is going to be the perfect solution is not necessarily what the client's thinking, and you have to bring the client in early on in the piece, because they will often have ideas about how it should work. So to get people across the line in terms of whatever that finish up looks like, it's not going to be perfect. It's probably going to be 80 to 85% of the way finished, because we do need clients to be involved in this process. It's challenging because it's challenging this notion of anything that leaves our firm needs to be correct and perfect. And that's probably another challenge. And the last one is data security and privacy. Quite rightly so. Organisations are very alive and sensitive to this sort of thing. When you try things new, particularly with technology, there seems to be this nervousness of, well, my client's data or my client's information is not going to be in our hands, it's going to be in the hands of somebody else. And it's trying to manage that conversation and to demonstrate that what you're using is incredibly secure, but it is met with anxiety, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think the core thing is there is, while your advice is always going to be, solid, the iteration process really is thinking of how someone is going to access the technology to use that advice. And I think that's really where it's really important to collaborate with your customers. And I guess that gives you a really good opportunity to build that relationship with them and to nail exactly how the end users are going to be using the legal service. And if I can segue then onto a live example, I'm sort of mindful of time, but if we take that example, the MC Max, why don't you explain briefly what that particular solution does for whom, and bring it to life a bit. That would be great.
I'll try without having it in front of me to demonstrate, but MC Max stands for the McCabe Kerwood Motor Accident Explorer. And essentially it helps motor accident insurers navigate the complex maze created by a new scheme which was introduced by the government in 2017. So when I say new scheme, it involved an act which goes to 11 divisions and 4 different schedules at the end. It involved regulations, and it involved some guidelines which themselves amount to 237 pages. So it was a very complex legislative package dealing with motor accident claims. And everyone had difficulty with it. So there were some new concepts which even experienced practitioners had not dealt with before. So the purpose of MC Max was to help motor accident claims handlers within insurers to navigate this complex maze. And what it does is we took the underlying processes and underlying logic which lies beneath the legislation and turned that into logic trees, which became the automated app, which ended up being MC Max. And along each path of where you have a defined question with a defined answer, along each path, we had links to relevant sections of the Act, relevant clauses of the regs, and relevant paragraphs of the guidelines, together with the case notes I mentioned earlier, relevant to that particular path. Podcast episodes, again, relevant to that path, and precedent decisions curated to that path as well. So a user can go down the path they want to, that their inquiry relates to, get an automated response, and also have reference material as they go to make valued judgments in their claims. Would an example help, Paul?
Yeah, it does. So the audience, as I understand it, was you built effectively a solution for claims, not lawyers, but claims people,
claims staff, yes,
claims staff who are, having to address specific questions which have a legal background, and instead of having to refer to someone more senior, they're being served information to help them and going through a path that triages them to the right answer.
That's exactly right.
And I guess the great thing about that is it's available 24/7, and it's it's compliant by design.
Yeah, exactly. So just one quick example: if you have a motor accident in New South Wales, you cannot be compensated if you only have a minor injury in this new scheme. So what is a minor injury? I'm not going to explain it now, but if you were a claims handler, you would go into MC Max, click on statutory benefits, click on liability, click on minor injury test. There'd then be two paths, one for physical injuries, one for psychiatric injuries. And then with a series of yes/no answers, each path helps the claims handler decide whether the claimant before then has a minor or non-minor physical injury or minor or non-minor psychiatric injury. And as I explained before, there's podcast episodes to help them, there's the legislation to help them, there's the guidelines to help them, everything right there in front of them on that path within the app.
Yeah, and I guess that's, Natalie, that's something that you couldn't really traditionally deliver as a service unless you had a lawyer sitting there as the query arose, which is obviously not practical in terms of cost or practical at all, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just to sort of supplement what Peter has said, it allowed us to, so traditionally we had, we would give advice, but we would also have support. So support by way of podcasts and guidance notes and articles. So what we were able to do is not only provide answers quickly to questions that were legislated, but we were able to draw in years and years and years of guidance and podcasts and case notes that Peter and his team have prepared. And to be able to amalgamate it and put it all together was just great. And it was something that we hadn't really been able to do well in the past with our existing technology. But for a user to be able to go in and, for example, have a question posed that they need to address, for them to be able to access relevant guidance and support, for them to then go and know what they need to do quickly has been really well received. Yeah.
Can I just add quickly, picking up on Nat's point earlier about involving clients early. We went through a process where we provided demonstrations to each client, some clients more than once, and then we had workshops, and each time we got feedback, we iterated the app. But one thing that struck me was in one of the workshops, all along I thought the team was developing a knowledge base, which I described, but it emerged from the workshop that they saw it more as a compliance tool in addition to being a knowledge base. And that would not have occurred to us had we not had the feedback from the client. So they saw a whole different use for it than we did, which I think is fantastic. And as I say, it wouldn't have happened had we not had the workshops.
Yeah, excellent. Look, again, I'm mindful of time. In terms of, Checkbox we interact with, clients directly, whether, in the context of an insurance company or, with the business owner in terms of, claims, long tail claims, short tail claims, audits, things like that, as well as working with in-house counsel. And, our experience has been, if there's a problem to be solved and technology can do it more efficiently, then why wouldn't you do it? I think, so that's, I guess, to some extent a no-brainer. But you being lawyers, it's not your core business, I guess, to create apps. So how have you found, deploying that, and that your customers, again, they're, happy to receive something if it's clearly adding value, but deploying it within your clients' operating base, what are the challenges, and has that been easy?
Yes and no. We got very quick positive feedback whenever we demonstrated MC Max. But the onboarding process, I think, was more difficult than I expected because of the levels you need to go through of approval within each insurer. They all have different processes, together with the data security issue, which Nat raised earlier, and also COVID slowed things down, and we had to do some onboarding via Zoom, which wasn't ideal. So it wasn't an easy process. What do you think, Nat?
Yeah, I would agree with that. So one of the things that I was thinking about was when we went to deploy MC Max for example, we sat around and we discussed where we thought the hurdles would be. And we sort of had tried to put some information together to be able to go and speak to it and address those hurdles that we thought would come up. And interestingly, in that first meeting, all of the hurdles that we thought would be there were not, and it was actually a whole bunch of other things that were going to be the challenges. So that was a challenge for us to have to. What we're finding is what is a hurdle or a challenge for one client will often be quite different to another for the same app and the same industry. I think what made it easier, and this is something that I'm very vocal about, is to sort of stick to what we do and we do well. We're a law firm. We are legal experts, and that is first and foremost what we do and what we do well. And I think just making sure that you've got a really good technology partner and someone that can help and has the experience building apps, deploying apps, really good on the InfoSec questions is really important. And I think part of what made it easier is having that really good partnership and actually working together rather than actually doing it all ourselves.
Yeah, can I just give a call out to, or shout out to Min and Eugenie at Checkbox, who were phenomenal in their support in all of our projects, not just MC Max, but other ones as well.
Yeah, no, we'll certainly pass that on. Yeah, they're excellent.
We've told them before anyway.
Yeah. Look, I'm mindful of time now. What I might do is just launch this poll, and please feel free to, you should see that now. But I just might wrap up, just quickly talking about realizing value. Clearly, there's lots of ways to do this. And really, from your perspective, it has been primarily value add services. But clearly, there are opportunities for operating SaaS models, and I'm going to publish some guidelines on that, because we do have customers that do sell these services. But any final thoughts on the commercial benefit or the relationship benefit of doing this?
There's several. Even though MC Max was offered as a value add, there's three things. Firstly, we hope it will help us be allocated an uneven share of the more lucrative work. Secondly, it helps us secure the contract when the contract ends and is renewed. It helps us argue our position to be reappointed to panels. And we also hope that by demonstrating what we can do, we can develop further apps down the track, which are commercial offerings.
Yeah, that's great.
I was just going to add one more point, because this did actually happen with MC Max, is when we went out to market with it, we actually had another player in the industry put their hand up who wasn't a client of McCabe Kerwood, wanting to onboard it as well. So whilst we set out, whilst we set out for it to be a value add, we actually managed to secure a new client out of it as well, which is great.
Well, that's great. Makes it all worthwhile. So thank you very much. I'm just going to wrap up now. But thank you very much, everyone, for joining. And as Peter, Natalie, it's very kind of you to share your experience. As I said, I will be providing, I might just share my screen briefly. I'm happy to provide any advice to anyone who is looking to whether it's case studies or deployment guidelines. Feel free to reach out. I'm also, Jess, who is our marketing lead, is telling me that I should be promoting our next webinar, which is on the 27th of October at 12:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. It's basically all about, assembling the right technology stack. And our head of customer delivery, Minwoo Yim, and Alex Rosa Norch from PwC Law, who's a legal technologist there, will be talking about that. And finally, if any of you do want some advice on GTM, feel free to reach out. There are my contact details. If you need Natalie's or Peter's details, we'll happily share those. So reach out to me and I can do that. Any final comments before we wrap up, Peter, Natalie?
No, I think we covered everything. Thank you very much for inviting me to participate, Paul. Much appreciated.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Natalie, thank you.
Yeah, more than happy for you to provide our details. Happy to chat about what we're doing. We've developed another 7 acts. We've got 3 in development. So I think we're quite experienced at doing this now. So very, very happy to chat.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.